Your life is not on the line. Mine is. And you think that I think this is funny?
I don't think it's funny whatsoever.
So I think, Your Honor, with all due respect, I think you should show some respect.
We're going to take a 5-minute break, and when we come back, the jury's coming out, and you need to call your next witness.
He refused to answer to his own name. Not once, not accidentally. Every single time the judge said Darrell Brooks, interrupted her, he objected. He told her he did not consent to being called that. He built a fort out of his own legal documents and hid behind it so the camera couldn't find his face. He asked the judge repeatedly, in the middle of a murder trial, whether the American flag in her courtroom had a gold fringe on it. Because if it did, he said it meant the court was operating under maritime law. And if it was operating under maritime law, then she had no jurisdiction over him. He was removed from the courtroom so many times that bailiffs eventually set up a second room with a camera and a muted microphone, so the trial could continue without him in it. And even then, from that second room, he could be seen on the video feed, screaming, waving his arms, making gestures at a proceeding he had already decided he wasn't a part of. And during victim impact statements, while the mothers and sons and husbands of people he had killed stood at a podium and wept, he rolled his eyes. This is who Darrell Brooks was in that courtroom. But before we talk about the courtroom, we need to talk about the parade, because nothing that happened in that Waukesha County Circuit Court can be understood without understanding what happened on a Sunday evening in November 2021 on a street lined with families in winter coats, holding signs, watching their children march.
After he drove his SUV into a Christmas parade in Waukesha last November. More than 60 others.
What happened in less than 60 seconds, and why witnesses, people who were there, who watched it happen in real time, later told investigators that it looked like he was trying to avoid the cars, but not the people. This is the case of Darrell Brooks, Waukesha, Wisconsin, 2021. And if you think the most disturbing part of this story is the attack, wait until you get to the trial. Welcome to Courtroom Justice Files, and if you're new to this channel, click on the subscribe button so you can get updates on new crime cases. November 21st, 2021, just west of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It was the 58th annual Waukesha Christmas Parade. The theme that year was comfort and joy. More than 60 entries, marching bands, floats, children with their baseball teams, and the Milwaukee Dancing Grannies, a beloved local dance troupe of older women who had spent years bringing joy to community events across southeastern Wisconsin. Women who wore matching outfits and sequin vests and performed with the kind of unbridled, unself-conscious happiness that makes people stop and point and smile. Families lined the route, starting at the corner of Pleasant and East Main. The sidewalks were packed. Parents lifted toddlers onto their shoulders. Kids held homemade signs. The parade had been running for about 30 minutes. A red 2010 Ford Escape came through a barrier at the edge of the parade route. It was moving at approximately 40 miles per hour. One police officer stepped directly in front of it. He banged on the hood. He ordered the driver to stop. The driver looked directly at him. Witnesses later described the expression on his face as having no emotion. The car did not slow down. What followed was captured on video from multiple angles by parade attendees who had been filming on their phones only seconds before. That footage, which prosecutors would later play in court, shows the SUV moving through the crowd at speed, bodies thrown into the air, people scattering in every direction. An officer fired his weapon at the vehicle in a final attempt to stop it. The car kept going. In less than 60 seconds, Darrell Brooks drove through the Waukesha Christmas Parade and left 6 people dead and more than 60 others injured, including children. Then he drove away. Jackson Sparks was 8 years old. He was marching with his baseball team, the Waukesha Blazers, alongside his older brother Tucker. Their mother, Sherry, was in the crowd watching. She had no idea the SUV was coming until it was already through. She ran toward the sound of screaming. She found her son Tucker first. He had been struck. He was alive. Then she found Jackson. He had suffered a traumatic brain injury. He was rushed to the hospital, and in the days that followed, while the rest of the country was still processing what had happened, Sherry and Aaron Sparks sat beside their boy in a hospital room and made one of the most devastating decisions any parent can be asked to make. Jackson Sparks died from his injuries. He was 8 years old. Virginia Sorensen was 79. Tamara Durand was 52. Leanna Owen was 71. All 3 were dancing grannies, women who had chosen to spend their Sunday evening doing what they loved, performing for their community, making children laugh at a Christmas parade. Wilhelm Hospel was 81. He was there that evening because his wife was a dancing granny. He had come to watch her perform. Jane Coolidge was 52. She was simply there, attending a parade the way you do. 62 more people were injured, some of them severely, many of them children. Broken bones, traumatic brain injuries, bodies launched by the force of a vehicle moving at 40 miles per hour through a crowd of people who had no time to run. And before any of this happened, before the SUV reached the first barricade, Darrell Brooks had been in a domestic dispute with his ex-girlfriend. He had beaten her. Police would later find her with a split lip and a black eye. She was wearing a medical boot on her leg because 3 weeks earlier, Brooks had run her over with the same car. He had been released from Milwaukee County Jail just 2 days before the parade on $1,000 bail. Bail that prosecutors would later describe as inappropriately low despite a criminal record that stretched back decades. Despite an open warrant for Nevada for skipping court on sex crime charges. Despite being assessed as a high risk for release $1,000. And 2 days later, a Christmas parade.
I watched the body fly up onto the hood, and her head snapped back, and the body remained on the hood as it passed the side of my vehicle to where I thought I could have just reached out and grabbed her.
So this happened that close to you?
Yes.
You saw all this with your own 2 eyes?
Yes.
Did the car continue past you?
Yes.
Where did it go?
The car veered kind of in front of me. I saw brake lights and saw what was Jane fall off the hood. He proceeded to, and she was basically on the right side of his vehicle, and he proceeded to run her over with the right front tire, then the right rear tire. And at that point, I was just focused on the body on the ground, but I remember hearing the roar of the engine again. And
How fast were you going?
2 miles an hour,
How fast would you estimate the other vehicle was going?
30.
Did you get a description of that other car?
It was red,
That's all you know?
like a box type back end. That's all I know. That's all. I again, once I thought my wife was the woman on the car. So you see your whole life going by you, you know, in what you think is an act of terror because you don't know what's going on. And then a body's laying on the ground. And, you know, at that point, that was my only focus. My vehicle, I threw it in park and ran to decipher if this was really who I think it is.
Okay.
Details of which direction the vehicle went after that, I cannot tell you. I'm sorry, it was tunnel vision right to the ground.
Of course. You do distinctly remember, though, seeing the red vehicle that you've described roll over the person on the ground?
Yes.
With both tires?
Yes.
Let's show you an item that's been marked as Exhibit 46, please. And we're gonna put it up for you first and have you take a look at it.
October 2022, Waukesha County Circuit Court, Wisconsin. Darrell Brooks had fired his public defenders. He had briefly entered a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity, then walked that back too. He had decided to represent himself in a trial where he faced 6 counts of first-degree intentional homicide, 61 counts of recklessly endangering safety, and dozens of additional charges. 76 counts in total. He declared himself a sovereign citizen. If you're not familiar with the sovereign citizen movement, the FBI describes its adherents as people who believe they are not under the jurisdiction of the federal government, that they are exempt from U.S. laws, and that courts have no true legal authority over them. It is a fringe ideology with no basis in law. Federal and state courts across the country have rejected it every time it has appeared in front of them. Every time, without exception. Darrell Brooks did not care. From the very first day of trial, he challenged the judge's jurisdiction. He asked her whether she had ever met the state of Wisconsin, because, he argued, A state is not a person and therefore cannot be a plaintiff. He demanded proof of subject matter jurisdiction. He asked about the gold fringe on the American flag at her courtroom. He refused to answer to his own name on the grounds that he did not consent to being called that. Judge Jennifer Doro, who had presided over this court for years and who had watched Brooks' pretrial behavior with the specific, exhausted patience of someone who is prepared for exactly this, looked at him and said, "I'm frankly not going to address these nonsense legal theories of yours. They have been debunked. They are typical sovereign tactics that have no place in our judicial system." Then she muted his microphone, but that is not even the most remarkable part. The most remarkable part is this. Legal analysts who watched the trial pointed out that Brooks was not simply disruptive. He was selectively disruptive. He would make a precise, nuanced legal argument about an evidentiary matter, demonstrating clear comprehension, and then, moments later, claim total confusion about the same subject. He was, in the words of one legal expert, deliberately using incomprehension as a tactic, believing apparently that if he refused to consent to the proceedings would not count. He removed his shirt and sat bare-chested at the defense table during jury selection. He hid behind a Bible to block the camera. He built a fort out of his legal documents. He was removed from the main courtroom multiple times and placed in a separate room with a video feed that the judge could mute when he would not stop yelling. He apologized for his behavior one morning, told the court his mother hadn't raised him this way, and then kept doing it.
To cooperate with this process.
But I
sir.
also have the Sixth Amendment right.
We have a witness available for you to call. I can require
It's
you
not
to
the
call
witness
her
that
right
should have been
now.
called at this time, Your Honor.
It is based on the list that you provided and
That didn't have a
order.
time. That didn't have a time or of
I'm not going to
or an
play
order.
this game with you, sir.
It's not no game. That's what you don't
It
seem
is
to
a game
understand.
you. I believe that fully.
I don't care what you believe fully.
All right.
It's not a game. I don't take
I
this as a
asked-
game. That's what
me
nobody.
explain this to you
That's what
once
nobody.
again.
You don't got to explain nothing to me.
Do you want?
That's what you don't understand. You think
you
that
want
this
the
is a whole
opportunity
game
to
to me.
question?
This is not a game to me, Your Honor. Nothing about this is a joke.
I never.
That's
said
what
it
y'all
was a
don't
joke.
understand.
But there's
And it's
some things in
unfair.
the ship
It's
that's going on.
unfair and it's disrespectful to me that you think I would come in here purposely and treat this like a joke or a game.
I never said it was a
What
joke.
type of statement is that?
Mr.
Your life is not on the line. Mine is. And you think that I think this is funny?
I don't think it's funny whatsoever.
So
And I understand.
I think, Your Honor, with all due respect, I think you should show
we're
some
going to take
respect.
a 5-minute break, and when we come back, the jury's coming out, and you need to call your next witness. Thank you. We are in recess.
No, you're not rushing me to judgment. I don't care what you're talking about.
The prosecution's case was, in a word, overwhelming. Dozens of witnesses, video footage from multiple angles, a police officer who had looked the defendant in the eyes from the hood of the car, physical evidence, a criminal complaint so thorough it left almost nothing to argument. And Darrell Brooks, who was his own defense attorney, cross-examined many of them. He questioned police officers about what they saw. He challenged the chain of evidence. He leaned into the sovereign citizen framework at every available moment, asking witnesses whether they had ever met the state of Wisconsin with the certainty of a man who believed he had found a loophole that would save him. He had not. What he had done by representing himself, by turning the courtroom into a months-long spectacle, by refusing to engage with the reality of what 12 jurors were watching, was hand the prosecution every single day. Because while Brooks was arguing about flag fringe and subject matter jurisdiction, the prosecution was showing the jury 60 seconds of footage that did not require interpretation. On October 26, 2022, the jury returned. They had deliberated for just under 3 hours, guilty on all 76 counts. 6 counts of first-degree intentional homicide, 61 counts of recklessly endangering safety, hit and run causing death, 6 counts. Guilty on every count the state had brought. The man who had screamed about maritime law and hidden behind a wall of documents and refused to answer to his own name sat in silence as the verdict was read. November 15th and 16th, 2022, sentencing. The first day was for the victims. 45 people took that stand, survivors, family members, people who had watched from the sidewalk and never been the same since. And what they said was not procedural, it was not scripted, It was the rawest, most unfiltered grief that a courtroom can hold. Jackson Sparks' mother, Sherry, stood at the podium and asked the room one question. Do you have any idea how gut-wrenching it is to explain to your 12-year-old son that his little brother isn't going to make it? She said that Brooks had violently ripped Jackson from their lives, that it hurts to breathe sometimes. Chris Owen, whose mother Leanna was one of the dancing grannies killed that night, walked to the microphone and looked directly at Darrell Brooks. He had one thing to say. All I ask is you rot, and you rot slow. At various points during the victim statements, Brooks rolled his eyes. He was briefly removed from the courtroom during the statements when he attempted to talk over the judge after she denied his request to respond to a victim. As they came to remove him, he looked at the bailiffs and said, "Come with it." On the second day before sentencing, Darrell Brooks was given time to speak. He spoke for nearly 2 hours. He said he was sorry. He said he had suffered from mental illness. He said that what happened on November 21st was not an attack. It was not planned. It was not intentional. No matter how many times you say it over and over, he told the court, it was not. He never once admitted what he had done. People in the gallery began to leave. The husband of one of the dancing grannies stood up midway through, said 4 words, "I've had enough," and walked out.
We had videograph evidence of his behavior all up and down that crime scene.
What do you think about the length of time that the jury took to deliberate?
We think the verdict was fair. The timing was spot on.
District Attorney Susan Opper, in asking for consecutive sentences, said Brooks had stacked his victims up just as he had stacked them as he drove down the road. Then Judge Jennifer Doro spoke. She said the footage from the parade had kept her up at night. She described the sheer magnitude of the crime, the number of people impacted, the viciousness of it. She said she had waited through the entire 2-hour statement for a true apology. "I waited," she said. "I didn't get it." She called his statement a feeble attempt to blame mental health. She described his courtroom behavior not as the product of illness, but as the calculated conduct of someone who believed his own performance could change the outcome of what a camera had already recorded. And then she sentenced him 6 consecutive life sentences, 1 for each person killed, plus an additional 762.5 years, plus restitution of more than $500,000. Darrell Brooks will never leave prison. Not for 1 day, not for 1 hour, not ever.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Darrell E. Brooks, guilty of first-degree intentional homicide.